I'm Dr. Joel Hughes, and I'm here on behalf of the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation and the American Association of Cardiovascular and Pulmonary Rehabilitation. I'm here to bring you this webcast on mindfulness. And this webcast is made possible with generous support from Boehringer Ingelheim. My agenda today is simple. I'd like to define mindfulness to describe exactly what it is and what it's not. I'd like to explain why it may be useful for people who have pulmonary fibrosis, although it's been used in many different contexts. And then finally, I want this to be practical, so I'm going to demonstrate 4 mindfulness exercises that you can try at home. But first, a story. In the early days of psychological science, researchers were interested in understanding how people learned fears. You see, some things that we're afraid of are automatically scary, like lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, spiders and snakes, things that are big and scary or that have venom or that in our evolutionary history we would think are dangerous to us. Maybe heights, maybe being confined in small places. These things are just scary. There's other things that we develop a phobia of, that we become fearful of, that we have to learn, like maybe escalators or cars. There were no cars in our evolutionary history, and so if someone is scared of cars, there should be a reason that they learned that somehow. Well, how does that work? These researchers were interested in finding out. And so what they did was they brought some people into a room and hooked them up to the equipment, and then they would play a tone, a 70 decibel, 600 hertz tone that would last about 5 seconds. And it sounded like this. So, that tone is not inherently scary, is it? What would they do to teach people to be afraid? Well, first, they played the tone once per minute, over and over, until people showed no reaction to the tone. Their heart rate did not increase, their breathing did not increase, nothing happened. Then, surprise, they injected people with a drug that temporarily paralyzed the diaphragm, so they couldn't breathe. Oh yes, use suffocation. Suffocation is one of those things that's automatically scary. And so after just one trial of being injected with a drug that paralyzes the diaphragm, now the people in the experiment would react to the tone every time. And what's weird about that is it kind of never went away. No matter how many times they played the tone, people still freaked out. And in fact, every single subject and some of the experimenters kind of got a phobia of the tone and the experimental situation. So I guess that worked. We know how people learn fear, or at least one way they can learn fear. Well, what does this have to do with anything? My point is that not being able to breathe is automatically scary. And people with pulmonary fibrosis have a number of different symptoms that they can experience. And those include things like coughing, fatigue, sometimes depression and anxiety, and very commonly shortness of breath, especially on exertion. So breathlessness is automatically terrifying. And we should not be surprised then that people with emphysema and COPD and pulmonary fibrosis, people with any kind of lung disease, people with heart failure, anything that makes you short of breath has the capability of producing stress and anxiety. And in fact, we find very high rates of anxiety and stress among people with any kind of lung disease because breathlessness is automatically terrifying. Well, what if there was a way that we could cope with breathlessness specifically and all of the other physical and emotional and mental symptoms of pulmonary fibrosis? What if there was something we could learn that would focus our attention where we want it to be focused in order to have it not be focused on something that's not helpful? Well, that's what mindfulness is going to turn out to be. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness has been defined as paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally. That's probably the most widely accepted definition, but let's break it down. Paying attention in a particular way. The way that we're paying attention is very right now focused, it's intentional, and it's the idea of just being really, really present. So it's on purpose. It's deciding to train our attention to focus on what we tell it to focus on. Like when you shine a flashlight on something, you can train your attention to be where you told it to be. It's in the present moment. We're not thinking about the future. We're not thinking about the past. We're just thinking about right here, right now, the present moment. And then finally, non-judgmentally. And the idea there is that we're not really getting swept up in what's happening. We're just paying attention. And in fact, we're stepping back. I don't believe everything I read. I hope you don't either. I don't believe everything I see on TV. Well, should I believe all of my thoughts and feelings? Or should I get swept up in everything that comes into my head? I don't think so. I think that learning to step back and not just react is maybe a good idea. And that's what we're doing with mindfulness. Stepping back from our physical sensations or our thoughts or our feelings to maybe get some perspective. Also, to try to train our attention to pay attention to what we want to be paying attention to, so that we're not just reacting to whatever happens in the moment and we're not just swept along with anything, but rather we can decide if we want to pay attention to something or not. And then finally, learning to decide how to respond instead of just being impulsive and reactive. So what is mindfulness not? Well, notice that my definition left out Buddhism, and that's because mindfulness isn't necessarily Buddhism. It's associated with Buddhism and mindfulness meditation from Buddhism, but it's more of a universal capacity that everybody has that any intellectual tradition could notice. And in fact, it's been written about using many different descriptors. It's not always called mindfulness. And that's why I bring this to your attention, because some people don't like it because they think it's religious. Well, it doesn't have to be religious at all. Mindfulness is paying attention and training your attention and focusing your attention without reacting. It's not necessarily Buddhism. And in fact, it's not even meditation. It's true that mindfulness meditation is a very common way to practice mindfulness and to learn mindfulness. But there's other ways to be mindful that do not involve meditation. It's also not a constant state. Being mindful is not always better than being mindless. I don't want to be mindful about the way that I dance. I just want to let go and dance. And if I thought about everything I was doing, I probably wouldn't dance because I look like an idiot. I don't want to know what direction I took to get to work. I just want to magically show up at work after I leave my house. And I don't want to mindfully pay attention to the steering wheel and the feeling of the road coming through the steering wheel and the pressure of my foot on the brake pedal. I don't want to be mindful. I just want to go to work and listen to the radio on the way. If I'm going to be mindful of anything, it's what I'm listening to on the radio. And so it's not a constant state. It's something that you learn and that you practice so that you can do it when you want to, when there's a time and a place. So why learn mindfulness? Well, there's very limited research specifically in patients who have pulmonary fibrosis on mindfulness. There's a much larger literature in other illnesses, such as some pulmonary diseases. And so there's not a lot of evidence to really look at other than by analogy from other conditions. But we know that one good example of a study showed that even 20 minutes of mindful breathing appeared to improve breathlessness in people who had a lung disease. So there's some promise there. Also, why learn mindfulness if you have pulmonary fibrosis? Well, going back to that human experiment with suffocation, what we'd like to be able to do is to interrupt the breathlessness fear cycle that people have written about, where you may have a physical sensation of breathlessness and shortness of breath, and then that can lead to catastrophic thoughts like, I can't breathe, I'm suffocating, I can't do anything, and then that can easily lead to feelings like fear and anxiety and stress. It's natural. And people get into this cycle and it becomes a vicious cycle. And so if there's anything we can do to take a step back, get some perspective, we don't ignore sensations. We see that they're there, but we don't necessarily believe them or obey them yet. And a great example is that if you're exercising in pulmonary rehabilitation, you're going to get short of breath. You want to get short of breath. And the shortness of breath shouldn't tell you to stop right now. Rather, it's a sign that you're exercising. And so mindfulness allows us to pay attention in the current moment to what's happening without reacting yet. And ideally, this helps us to get some perspective and to interrupt that breathlessness fear cycle. So now I'd like to teach you 4 mindfulness exercises that you can try at home. The first one is called mindful breathing. The second one is the traditional mindfulness meditation. The third one is a 5-4-3-2-1 grounding exercise that uses all 5 senses to have you pay attention to very concrete things so that you come into the present moment and out of your head. And then the last one is called mindful music meditation. For the first one, for mindful breathing, which is one of the first mindfulness exercises we teach to patients in pulmonary rehabilitation, we're just going to spend 3 minutes focusing on our breathing. In the first minute, we're going to become aware of our breathing. In the second minute, we're going to gather our attention to focus on the breath. And in the third minute, we're going to do something called expanding. So let's give it a try. I'll just read it to you now. Bring yourself into the present moment by sitting up straight in a chair with both feet flat on the floor. If you're comfortable, close your eyes or partially close your eyes. Then ask yourself, what is my experience right now? What thoughts are floating through my mind? What feelings are attached to those thoughts? How does my body feel at this moment? Acknowledge and accept your experience, even if it is unwanted, without any judgments. Just be in the moment. Minute 2, gathering. Focus on your breathing. Place one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. Direct your full attention to your breathing. Don't fight with your thoughts as your mind wanders, as it surely will. Just gently bring the focus back to each breath. Minute 3, expanding. As you breathe in, feel your breath circulate throughout your entire body. With this breath, feel the sense of the body as a whole. Your muscles and joints, your posture, the expression on your face. With each breath, we give and receive life. This basic breath is our connection to ourselves and to all living things on earth. This breathing space provides a time for you to connect with this present moment. That was mindful breathing. Now let me show you a mindfulness meditation. Typically, this is practiced for 15 or 20 minutes at a time, but we're going to do it very quickly for the purposes of this video. So sit comfortably, bring your attention to your breath, pay attention to your breath, and when your mind wanders, bring your attention back to the breath. That's all there is to it. I'll read you a little bit more. and you can play along if you want. Find a comfortable spot. Find a comfortable sitting position with your back straight in the chair. Sitting in a posture which for you is comfortable embodies dignity, stillness, and stability. Some people would have a meditation bell to start coming into stillness. Then just feel yourself sitting. Feel your whole body holding it in your awareness. And when you're ready, bring your attention to the breath. Just tuning in to the feeling of the breath moving in and out of the body. Focusing on the feeling of the breath wherever it predominates. Noticing your belly expand, perhaps. Noticing the temperature of the air coming in and flowing out. Noticing the feeling in your nostrils or mouth, perhaps. Just keep your attention on the breath for the full duration of the breath. Ride the waves of your breathing like a raft riding waves on the ocean. If you find that your mind has wandered off of your breathing, take note of where your mind has gone, and then gently, without judgment or clinging on to the content of what you were thinking or feeling, or rejecting or suppressing, just let go, let it go, and bring your attention back to the breath. Do this over and over whenever your mind wanders, and you will train your attention to focus on the breath. That's pretty much the instructions. And if you were learning mindfulness meditation, you would spend substantial amounts of time sitting and focusing on the breath, paying attention on purpose in the present moment without reacting or judging. So that's the mindfulness meditation technique. What about the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique? This is a form of mindfulness that's also very helpful for people who struggle with feeling like things are becoming unreal or getting really stressed out. And what it goes like is this. Take a deep, slow breath. What are 5 things you can see? I can see the camera. I can see the watercolor my dad painted on the wall across the room. I can see my water bottle. I can see my desk. I can see my microphone, which is out of the shot for you. What are 4 things you can touch? I can touch the floor. I feel my feet on the floor. I can touch the desk. It's smooth and hard. I can touch this pen. I can touch my hands. What are 3 things you can hear? I can hear a clock ticking. I can hear the computer fan. I can hear someone walking upstairs. What are 2 things you can smell? If I had a cup of coffee, I might take a smell of the coffee. If I had a candle, I might smell the candle. What is one thing you can taste? This might be a point, again, to take a drink of your tea or your coffee, or even water, or a piece of gum. There's something you can taste. Sometimes you have an aftertaste in your mouth already from lunch. The point of the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique is to fully engage your 5 senses. That directs your attention to the present moment in a very concrete way and away from stressful thoughts. Finally, I'd like to show you a music meditation, and I'm using this one to show you that mindfulness doesn't have to be meditation, and it doesn't have to involve the breath. Just like the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding exercise had nothing to do with breathing unless you wanted it to, music meditation does not have to be about breathing. And I bring this up because although breathing exercises are something that we do in pulmonary rehabilitation, and there's nothing scary or dangerous about that, sometimes it's nice to not think about breathing if that's something that causes stress for you when you're thinking about it. And so the music meditation has nothing to do with breathing. And also, this will show you how mindfulness can be used to train your attention. And as a caveat, I made this one up based on some literature. That's not important right now, but I just made this one up and I think it works, but it's up to you to decide if you like it or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to put on some headphones, we're going to listen to the music, and we're going to train our attention. Like this. Okay, here we go. Yes. Relaxing music. Put on some headphones. If you're comfortable, close your eyes. This is just a little over 3 minutes. Start to pick out the individual parts. Okay, drums. Pay attention to the percussion. Just the percussion. Wait for something to change. The strings. There's kind of a violin sound. Just listen to that. What we're doing is training our attention to focus on different elements of the music. Okay, that's new. Guitar. Listen to the guitar sound. Is there anything different between your right and your left ear? Maybe one of the instruments is louder in the right ear or the left ear. Okay, it changed again. That's a tambourine. Listen to the beat. Just hear the music. Block everything else out. Your eyes are closed. You don't hear any talking. You don't see anything. Just focus on the music. What we're doing is training our attention to take our mind off of whatever might be running through our mind all the time. And we're just using music, but it could be anything. This is just an example of paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment. Do you like the song? Not like the song? Doesn't matter. When's the last time you really, really listened? Just focus on the piano now. It's kind of the same chord progression over and over. I just picked royalty-free music, but you could pick whatever you actually like. It changed a little bit. It's only about 30 seconds left. I made this up, but it shows that anything that you do can be done mindfully. And if you do mindful music meditation, okay, less musical instruments now. It's getting close to being done. It's going to fade out. What we're doing is we're learning to focus our attention where we want it to go. And that's music meditation. So there you have it. 4 mindfulness exercises that you can practice at home. We have mindful breathing. We have mindfulness meditation, which is the most commonly practiced form of mindfulness meditation that people learn. We have the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding exercise, which uses sensory experiences in your environment to help you come back down to earth and get out of your head. And we have mindful music meditation. So here's some tips for learning and using mindfulness. First of all, try to practice mindfulness daily. Mindfulness is like diet or exercise, where it's really consistency that will help you to learn it and to get good at it. It's not about doing a whole bunch of mindfulness all in one day. It's better to do a little bit of mindfulness each day until you're pretty good at it. And while we're on that topic, practice mindfulness in different contexts. Try mindfulness at home. Try mindfulness while you're walking around outside. Try mindfulness while you're sitting in a car. You can practice mindfulness anywhere. And it's nice if you practice it in different contexts so that you can learn how it feels in different places. And so you don't feel that it has to be in a perfect environment. It can be anywhere that you can be mindful. Practice mindfulness before you encounter stress. You want to learn to be mindful so you know what it feels like to be really present and aware, really hear concretely, really relaxed, really observing what's happening without reacting. You want to get good at that before something happens that is stressful so that then you can apply that during stress. So then you practice during stress. When something stressful happens, you're short of breath, you're having an unwanted physical symptom or sensation, you're having an unwanted emotional feeling, or you have worries in your head, that's a good time to try out your mindfulness skill and see if you can pay attention in the present moment without judging, just so that you're aware. That helps you to stay relaxed and not react. Some common issues and solutions that people talk about. People say, well, I don't have time to practice mindfulness. Really? The mindful breathing exercise was 3 minutes, and you don't have to shut your eyes. You probably have 3 minutes while you're waiting in line at the store that you could decide to do the mindful breathing exercise. A couple times a day, 3 minutes a day, not a big deal. Now, people that are really serious about mindfulness will do the sitting mindfulness meditation for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, maybe once or twice a day. But those are really the experts, and that's fine. Practice as much as you like, but most of us have time to be mindful at least sometimes during the day. People will say, I don't have anywhere to practice mindfulness. Well, that's not true, because you can do mindfulness anywhere. On the couch, laying in bed, walking around the house. It doesn't matter. Because mindfulness is more of an attitude that we adopt and a skill, it doesn't require a special place to do this. It doesn't require any equipment. People will say, my mind wanders too much. Well, of course it does. That's why we say, when your mind wanders, and it surely will, just bring your attention back to, fill in the blank, to the breath, to the sensations that you're feeling, to the music that you're listening to. Your mind is going to wander. And it's especially going to wander if you haven't trained your attention to focus on what you're trying to focus on. And so spend the time to just train yourself to bring your attention back to where you want it to be without judging yourself, without getting frustrated. And over time, you'll learn that your mind wanders less and less, and that's okay. Even if it does wander, it doesn't matter. The point of mindfulness is just to notice that it's wandering and bring it back to what you're doing instead of letting it run amok. Finally, people will say, well, it's not working. Of course it's not working. Nothing works right away. Think about diet and exercise. It takes years of diet habits and at least weeks of exercise to start to notice real change. And so if you were to practice mindfulness a couple times a day for 2 weeks, that's when you would start to see what the changes are. And if you especially practice in different contexts and then try it during stress, you might be surprised at how well it works. So, back to the beginning, what is mindfulness? It's anything that you want to do that involves paying attention in the current moment without judging or reacting. Just being present and aware so that you can observe without getting swept up in what's happening. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I have a couple references here. Thanks for watching.